Welcome back to Cryptid Mysterious. Today's encounter will likely leave more questions than answers. I'm a scout leader and have been for about 20 years. There were a few boys who were in the midst of achieving their Eagle Scout badge, and we planned a weekend for some wilderness survival training. After much consideration, I and a few other leaders had selected an area near Bruffy Creek by the base of Round Mountain as the location best suitable for this weekend's training. Personally, I had been in the Special Forces where I underwent considerable survival training while in the service of our country. However, there's a critical difference in what I had learned and what a Boy Scout needs to embrace. As a soldier, we typically begin our training based on the scenario that we're in. We're in enemy territory and need to get back to friendlies. The most typical scenario being that of a downed pilot. In that situation, we want to be totally evasive. We do not want to be found and must by any means survive off the land for as long as it takes to be extricated from behind enemy lines or find our way back to a safe haven. As a Boy Scout, however, the scenario is completely different. We're working under the notion that an individual or individuals have lost their way and in fact want to be found. So the focus is more on signaling and shelter than living off the land and staying out of sight. It was the first week of August 2003 when we made our way back to the area to set up camp for the weekend. There was a total of 7 people, 4 young men and 3 leaders. After having set up camp and done a little reconnoitering of the surroundings, this day was to be geared around constructing shelters out of materials found in the woods. So during the day, we focused on the traditional lean-to design in what I will call an open front hut, which basically consists of 3 sides and a roof, made of logs and tree boughs. The boys that day had proven themselves exceptionally well for young men. Their skills and ability to work together as a team were truly remarkable. This is what scouting is all about. We want to instill within young men a level of maturity and responsibility that is not the norm societally. At day's end, we all had a well-deserved good night's rest after having spent the evening around the campfire. The following morning, we got up early, with the day's plan being to start practicing some techniques used for signaling for help. As a group, we were working on how to create a smoky fire using fresh pine boughs. As the day progressed, we had created 2 signals which could in theory be seen from the air. One spelled out the letter SOS with large logs and branches. The second spelled the word help. Both were created in the same fashion in a couple of clearings. Having accomplished phase 1 of this exercise, we as a group began to hike up Round Mountain in hopes of seeing what the signals looked like from some elevation. It was a fairly rigorous hike, to say the least, but we did finally reach several excellent points from which we could clearly see that what we had created would in fact work well. I was extremely happy with the effort these young men had put forth, and we all descended the mountain. There's nothing like the feeling of job well done as a team. And these are the types of things that we want these youngsters to take hold of and carry throughout their lives. We spent the latter part of the afternoon and the evening resting up and enjoying each other's company. This was being done out of necessity because tonight we were going to engage in a group night hike. Our plan was to climb the lower level of Round Mountain well after sunset and see just what type of challenges navigating in the dark would present. Now, I have to tell you that I brought along with me an older military grade night optics device. A device which I used personally to look for UFOs and activity in the sky. But that's a story for another day. And yet, as crazy as this story will turn out, it was actually quite a coincidence that I had the optical device with me at the time. The night was clear, we were under a gibbous moon at about half stage that was very bright. This enabled us to have some fairly decent illumination during the hike. We had made it up to what I would say was about 2,000 feet in elevation and had stopped for a well-needed breather. Having hiked up the mountain earlier, I was wondering if this was the best choice for the night. But we were there nevertheless. As we sat resting and talking, one of the young men said, "Hey guys, check that out." As we all looked in the direction of his pointing finger, we could see a light source in the distance that was moving very slowly. Personally, my first thought was that it was a person holding something like a lantern walking around the woods. It was very difficult for us to judge how far away it was because we did not know the size of the light that we were looking at. Obviously, the light now had all of our undivided attention. It would move in one direction and then another. At times, it varied in intensity. At some point, it appeared to be speeding through the trees at a rate that no man could have done walking or running. We could see it zooming in and out of sight within the forest, zigzagging around very fast in a random pattern. At this point, we all knew that it was not a man with a lantern, or a man with anything else for that matter. After about 20 minutes or so, we had decided to descend in the direction of this object in hopes of seeing what it was. We were able to keep our eyes on it for virtually the entire time we were hiking in its direction, and it seemed to be staying within a certain area, darting in and about the trees. We were nearing where it was and could now see that it was a ball of soft blue light. We reached a spot where there were maybe 200 yards away. Again, this was only a guess because we didn't know how large this ball was, which made it extremely hard to judge distance. We had stopped to watch, and I took out my night vision scope to take a closer look. I was having really a tough time getting this thing into focus and following it because of its extreme movements. After maybe 10 minutes or so, it stopped, and I was able to put the lens right on it. I could now see it hovering next to a tree in a small opening within the forest. The light from it was casting a glow on the surrounding trees. Everyone was getting very excited, and we started to really hustle in hopes of getting closer to it. When we reached the point of being maybe 50 yards away, now I could see in the vivid detail it was about 2 feet in diameter, and everybody with me was taking turns at my night vision scope. We were completely mesmerized by this orb. Then one of the boys who was using the optics at the time said that it was doing something really weird. He said that it looked like it's bulging outward or something. Passing the optics to me, he said, "Here, Mr. Deerduff, take a look." As I put the scope to my eye, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm sure that we all remember blowing soap bubbles as a kid. You put the little wand to your lips and slowly blow into the ring of soap, and the bubble would gradually come out of the ring, being a very large bubble. This is exactly what I was seeing. This blue orb was now gradually bulging outward, and a large glob, for lack of a better word, was coming out of its side, growing in size as it descended to the ground. The orb was hovering maybe 10 or 12 feet off the ground. As the bubble-like structure met with the ground, we could see something forming within the bubble. It was a huge Bigfoot. At this point, the bubble was still attached to the orb, and it didn't make any sense to me or the others how something this large could be coming out of something so small. I speak for all of us when I say we were stunned by what we were seeing. I could tell some of the boys were getting a little frightened, but to their credit, they hung tough. What I had just described to you stayed this way for about 10 minutes. As we were passing the scope around between each other, it was then that the bubble became detached from the orb, and the orb and bubble were now completely separate and intact. We could see this large Bigfoot standing motionless within the bubble. To the eyes, it looked like it was frozen in space and time. It was not moving. It was then that the bubble started to dissipate, and the Bigfoot was left standing in the glow of the orb, and it started to move. Well, let me tell you, you'll never see 3 men and 4 boys tear up through the woods so fast in your life. We ran about 400 or 500 yards before coming to a stop. Thank God nobody got hurt. As we stood there panting, we all looked back in the direction of the Bigfoot and the orb and could still make out the orb in the trees. After we caught our breath, we kept walking and did not stop until we had made it all the way back to the tents. From the camp, we could still see the orb up on the mountain, and it was moving around again within the trees. All of us were left wondering where the Bigfoot could possibly be. And we were very uncomfortable thinking about that, as you can imagine. We spent the next 30 to 60 minutes breaking down camp with speed that I don't think was humanly possible. We were moving like Popeye on spinach. And when we were through, we hightailed it out of there. These boys are all adults now, and they keep in touch with me on a regular basis. A bond was formed between all of us that night on Round Mountain that can never be broken. I know you'd like to hear about the Bigfoot and what it looked like, and all that I can say on this, it was extremely large and broad in every sense, just as we've all seen in all the pictures and depictions. It was also completely covered in fur from head to toe. As it had started to slowly move, we were out of there in such a hurry that I couldn't gather any more information about it. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Cryptid Mysterious. Share your comments and thoughts in the comments below. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and send an email to cryptidmysterious@gmail.com if you'd like to detail your story if you've had an encounter. Until next time.